Okay, we're going to work a little bit on finding the volume with spheres, and I've picked a couple of the more challenging problems from these exercises. First thing you need to know is volume of a sphere is 4/3 pi r to the third, but we need to read carefully to make sure we actually have a sphere and we actually have the radius. In this case, we have a hemisphere, or half of a sphere. Hemi means half, like the eastern hemisphere or the northern hemisphere is half of the globe. So hemisphere is half of the sphere. So if the hemisphere has a volume of that, we need to multiply it by 2 and figure out the volume of the entire sphere is about 17,164 for the entire sphere or the entire ball. So I'm going to set my volume equal to 17,164 since this formula is for the entire sphere instead of just half of it. And then I'm going to have 4/3 pi r cubed. My next thing I'm going to need to do is solve for r, my radius. Now, the problem I have here is I could solve for r using DeltaMath, but I'm going to show you another trick I can do. While DeltaMath is loading, we're going to do 17,164. So 17,164. And I'm going to try to set it equal to 4/3 pi r to the third power. Now you notice it gives me that exclamation point, letting me know that if I hover over the exclamation, it says I cannot have an equation like that. It won't let me do that in the testing version of Desmos. And the easy fix is just to move everything on the one side. By this time, I can subtract. Now what that's going to give me is a cubic graph. If I set that equal to 0 with everything on one side, it's going to give me a cubic, well, it's going to give me the option to add a slider actually because it doesn't have a graph yet. So if I add the slider, I could basically check and see different numbers until I got the number I was looking for. So an easier way to handle this though, instead of dealing with the slider, is just, since I'm trying to get it to graph, replace that r with an x. And when I replace the r with an x, it should be ready to give me a graph. I might have to zoom out a little bit to see it. But once I zoom out a little bit, there's my x-intercept. My x-intercept is roughly 16. So I think that is telling me my radius is approximately 16. Now, the only other problem I have is it's great to know my radius is 16, but it didn't ask me for the radius. It asked me for the diameter. So since it asked me for the diameter, I have to remember the radius is halfway across. So if this is a radius of 16 all the way across, my diameter is going to be twice that length. So my answer is going to be something close to 32. And normally I wouldn't get rid of the decimal, but it was so small that when I'm rounding to the nearest tenth, it's negligible, won't make a difference. So I believe that should be your correct answer on that one. Let's try one more. We have this one is different because it is wanting us to find the volume of a hemisphere with a given diameter. Once again, I'm going to use my volume formula. So my volume, once again, is 4/3 pi r to the third. Read carefully, though, because they did not give me radius. They gave me a diameter of this. So if all the way across is 54.8, halfway across my radius would be 27.4. And let's see. I'm trying to find the volume of a hemisphere, so I'm going to do 4/3 pi, and then my radius is 27.4 to the third power. Now, my difficulty I have here is when I do Desmos this time, I don't have a need to solve for anything because it's going to give me the volume directly. 4/3 pi, and then my radius was, look back, it was 27.4. The only problem with that answer is that 86,000 number is a volume of an entire sphere. So if I want a hemisphere, half the sphere, I'm going to have to take that answer and multiply it by 1/2 because I only want half. So that's 43,083.43. I think it wanted it to the nearest tenth. So that would be 43,000. I think it was 843. Let me check it one more time. Oh, 083. Good thing I checked it. And then 0.43 would be one decimal. That 3 would just be discarded because it would not round it up to 5. And that should be your final answer on that one.